Hi everyone, this is an additional video for solving quadratic equations. In our examples today, you're going to see that you're going to have terms on both sides of the equal sign. So this might look familiar. This is still the property that we're going to be using, which is once we can factor our quadratic, then we can set both factor equal to 0 and then solve from there. So the big thing is that this has to be 0. Most of your examples so far, you've had 0 as what it equals. Now we're going to have either a value or another variable or maybe multiple terms on that right-hand side. Okay, so here we are with a problem that looks similar to last week's, but you can see this time that we really have terms on both sides of our equal sign. We don't see any zeros anywhere. And if you think about the name of our product property, it's called the zero product property. I should see a 0 somewhere, so we need to make the right-hand side be a 0. Okay, so we need a 0 on the right. So to do that, we need to just do our opposite operations. We're going to add 12 to both sides. Add 12. If you do have any, common factors or like terms, you can combine them. For us right now, we don't, right? So our new equation is going to be 10x squared minus 26x plus 12 equals 0. So this is the way that it needs to be set up for us. So your goal is to make sure that you just do whatever you need to do to make this right-hand side a 0. So we had to add 12. Now we can factor. So right now I see that all of these are even, so I can make my life a little bit easier and factor out a 2. I'll be left with a 5x squared minus 13x plus 6 equals 0. And now we can use our a times c method. So a times c method is kind of like work in work here. So we're going to do 5 times 6, we get 30. And we need to find the factors of 30 that'll combine to negative 13. So we have 1 and 30, 2 and 15. We have, we have 3 and 10. 4 doesn't go into it, 5 and 6. So that's it. So keep in mind, this is a positive 30, so that means that our signs need to be the same signs. And we're trying to get to a negative 13 is our b value. And to do that with the same signs, that means both of our factors need to be negative. So that means that if I look at 3 and 10, if I do 3 plus 10, it's going to give me 13. But if I do negative 3 plus negative 10, that'll give me negative 13. Okay, so once we've decided that negative 3 and negative 10 are the proper values, we're going to use it to split up that b term. So this 2 is still in the front. We have 5x squared. Now we're splitting up that negative 13x to negative 3x minus 10x plus 6. And that still equals 0. So you can see how we really just expanded what we had on the inside of our parentheses. Again, if you need help with any of this, this is factoring. So I do suggest going back and watching a video on factoring if you have any troubles with the a times c method. So now we need to do our grouping categories. So we're going to be grouping these into 2 groups. We want to factor out from each group. So factor GCF from each group. Again, this goes back to our factoring techniques. So this 2 is still in the front. You can kind of just ignore him for now. Out of my first group, I can pull out, just an x, and I'm left with 5x minus 3. In my second group, I can pull out, the most they have in common is a 2, and I need the signs to look exactly the same. I need to be what's left over to be a positive 5x. So I'm going to factor out a minus 2. Okay, so that way I'm left with 5x and then a minus 3, which is great. So now, finishing out our a times c method, we're left with 5x minus 3. That was our repeated factor. And left over is x minus 2 equals 0. So this is where we now can apply the zero product property. This is the place that we've been waiting for. So we want to use the zero product property to solve. So what that means, we're going to take each factor and set it equal to 0. So 2 is technically a factor. Factors are just things that are being multiplied to give us a total. So now we also have 5x minus 3 is a factor. We're going to set that equal to 0. and x minus 2 is a factor, also gets set to 0. So over here, this should be pretty clear that 2 does not equal 0, so this does not matter to us. If it works, but that did not, so it's not an answer. Over here, we can solve for x by adding 3. So we get 5x equal 3, and then dividing by 5. Scroll up a little bit. So we get x to equal 3/5. And over here, we can solve for x again. We have to add 2. Remember, these are two separate problems now. We have two separate things we're working on. They don't have anything to do with each other at the moment. So then we get x to equal 2. So we have two x values here. These are two solutions.